So, as most of you already know, especially if you're coming from Admonium's video, I don't play Skyblock anymore. But I also spent 3 months of my life farming pumpkins like a madman. So, here's my story for those who don't know everything, or are new here. So it all started June 22nd, 2020, the beginning of the summer after school had ended, and the mark of a journey I never thought I'd actually dedicate my life for. I was very new to Skyblock, and I wanted to get my first 50 skill with farming because it seemed like something I could do very easily. I originally had joined Skyblock like the week it came out, but wrote it off as too grindy for me to play. Ironic, right? So I posted a video detailing that I had a goal of reaching 100 million pumpkins for the first time in history. I feel like Admonium gave me a bit more credit than I think the achievement actually mattered, but that's just my opinion. I don't know the whole community or if it really mattered, but whatever. At the time I only had about 1 million pumpkins in my collection, which I used to get a little bit of money early on. This was just shortly after the personal compactor came out, and I was still ridiculously poor. I was using farmer boots for speed. I had grinded those pumpkins to craft. I knew nothing about what I was getting into, and I just had the goal of reaching 100 mil by the end of the year. The only thing I knew was Chrissy had #1 collection, and no one seems to be farming from what it looked like. So I thought that I could get #1 and have a 100 million pumpkin collection. Boy, was I in for a ride. So a few weeks later, I had started streaming daily for about 2 weeks. I did random things in Skyblock to actually progress like a normal player. Then I made an update video on actually getting 100 million pumpkins, and this was a few days after I had started shifting my focus to farming. After this, my streams for the next few weeks consisted of showing me farming pumpkins, doing a bit of PvP, and repeat. But then sadly, things started to go down with OBS, Twitch, and then YouTube delay, so my motivation to stream quickly diminished. Then I moved to farming behind the scenes. Even though I had made the goal of 100 mil long before I started farming, it took me very little time to actually reach farming 50. Just about 2 weeks after legitimately looking at my insane goal and working on it, I had farming 50, which I reached on August 14th and uploaded a video about it on the 15th. Then this is where things started to really get serious. This idea turned into an obsession. I picked up pace from here and occasionally played Bed Wars just to take a quick break from farming. Despite this, I would still sometimes spend 12 or more hours a day farming pumpkins. Then this is where school started back up at the beginning of September. Now this didn't affect me too much. I farmed a ton, so school would just lower my 2 mil-ish a day rate. But with school, I aimed for about 1 million pumpkins a day, considering my rough rate of 200k an hour, and school got off at 4 p.m. By this time, I already had roughly 25 million pumpkins collected, give or take. So for the next while of me uploading, it didn't seem like I really focused on farming, and then Bed Wars and other content was my priority. Other than my joke of a pumpkin war video against someone who never farmed pumpkins, it didn't seem like I actually farmed at all. But to anyone who paid attention to my stats or time played, they definitely knew otherwise. Then I reached another slightly smaller goal. September 16th, 2020. The day I reached the halfway point in my journey for 100 million pumpkins. I later posted a video on the 21st showing highlights of that 50 million stream. So far I'd only been farming for about a month and a half. Seriously, that is. This lined me up for reaching the 100 million mark by late November, mid-December if I kept my pace of 800k to 1 million pumpkins a day. Shortly after this, Shabby messaged me. You know how I said that anyone paying attention to my stats knew otherwise? Yeah, that's how Shabby found me. He asked to see my pumpkin farms and what have you, just seeming to be profiling me. I looked at his Skylea and I realized this is the actual #1 pumpkin farmer. Because at this point I had passed Chrissy's numbers but I wasn't in first place, so I was kinda confused. Then by the time I was nearing Shabby's #1 spot, I decided to turn my APIs off so no one could track me, and I would just be able to appear out of nowhere like 5 or more million ahead of Shabby. Honestly, I don't know why I did it, considering my goal never was really being #1, but I did like seeing the #1 spot, so I went for it. Then, there was a huge advancement in my speed, all credited to one thing: minions. Over the course of a day and a half, I grinded to 24 minion slots because I already had the 5 extra minion slots in place. Then I placed the pumpkin minions and let them work. Now came an obstacle for me. I had to go with my family and be away for up to 4 days, which only ended up being 2.5, but I had to be prepared. I wouldn't be able to AFK with my alt account's rabbit pet, and I wouldn't get higher rates on my minions, and of course I wouldn't be able to farm. But I had an idea. Hypercatalysts. I bought enough hypercatalysts to secure me for at least 4 days so I could safely go on my little vacation. On my return, I collected minions and shot past Shabby, securing my #1 spot in Pumpkin Collection on October 17th, 2020. I now held the crown for the most pumpkins collected in Hypixel Skyblock. So then this brought along the final stretch for 100 million pumpkins. This time there was no slowing down. I bought hypercatalysts when I could, I made sure I could AFK with my rabbit pet on my alt, and I farmed as much as I could, not only to keep the #1 spot, but to stick to the idea of getting 100 million on Halloween, the day of the pumpkins. I farmed and farmed and farmed until I was close enough where it didn't matter when I farmed, so I basically stopped farming for a bit with a little wiggle room. Then it was Friday, October 30th. I wasn't as close as I would have liked to be, so I went at it until within a reasonable range to stream the next day. The morning of October 31st, Halloween. Also a day for me to go to a wedding that was happening in my family, which conveniently for me, didn't have to worry about until right after the stream. So that morning I farmed and I farmed some more. For 2.5 hours I farmed until I reached the 100 million mark. I had finally done it. I had the 100 million pumpkin goal, and I held the #1 spot with it. I was a bit shaky, not gonna lie. I was really happy after farming for 3 months straight and finally achieving my goal. Now, was it worth it? I don't know. I was able to have the title as the first person to put Pumpkin Collection to 9 digits. I was able to do something with my time of distance schooling. I was able to flex a little bit because of my high collection, but I don't see it as a huge deal because it's just something that I decided to do one day and I went with it. Although it took a long time, I was determined to get there. I never thought of it as something that was too big of a deal, although Admonium claims it to be the biggest day in pumpkin history. I don't think that kind of recognition is required there, but realistically, it is going to take a long time before someone breaks into 10 digits. If they do, that is. It was a long journey, it was a fun one, and it ended in my success. So on this journey, I definitely couldn't have done it alone, so I'm forever grateful for those who have stuck with me. And I'm grateful for those of you who might just be watching today. Thanks for taking your time out of the day to watch a video of some random person who wasted months of their life to holding left click on pumpkins in a video game. I'd like to thank a few people in specific for rooting me on even when it seemed unlikely. For one, Sour Candy. You're a great friend and a mod throughout everything. You're always there to push me forward with my goals, and I truly could not have done it without you. Titanic, my friend for years on end, who suggested the 100 million goal to be reached on Halloween. A ton of guild members for supporting me at every milestone. To name a few, Ash, Mout, Indelusional, Gab, and Mad. Then finally, Shabby, for unintentionally pushing me to go faster with farming than I ever had before. But with that said, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Later.